What if I informed you that 6 United States, yes, genuine American territories, could potentially realign and become Canadian almost instantaneously? Imagine a scenario with no conflict, no intense political drama, just a single pivotal event unfolding. And suddenly, boom! Borders are redefined, flags are exchanged, and passports require reissuing. Does that sound far-fetched? Perhaps. However, these specific states already exhibit more Canadian characteristics than you might realize. This similarity isn't just superficial. It runs deep culturally, economically, and even politically. They are teetering on the edge, and all it might take is one significant tipping point to push them over. You might be surprised by the extent of these connections. The world stage has certainly seen its share of dramatic shifts lately, and exploring these potential realignments offers a fascinating perspective on North American dynamics. We encourage you to stay engaged with our analysis. Please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss updates on compelling geopolitical and economic scenarios like this one. Giving this video a thumbs up also greatly helps us reach a wider audience. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Let us know in the comments below. Believe me, the final state on our list, number 1, will genuinely challenge your perception of North American borders. Stick around as we delve into the details for each state, and we'll present our comprehensive conclusions at the very end of the video. First up, let's examine Oregon, number 6 on our list. Consider this. What if a state, seemingly deeply integrated into the American identity, suddenly contemplated a future north of the border? Oregon might present itself as a quintessential West Coast state, but a closer examination reveals a profound interconnectedness with Canada. It's not just a casual neighborly relationship. Oregon and Canada are practically intertwined. This state, known for its stunning natural landscapes and progressive mindset, shares more than just a border region vibe with its northern counterpart, particularly British Columbia. The alignment stretches across various domains, from political ideologies to environmental stewardship. Oregon's approach to governance often mirrors Canadian sensibilities more closely than those of some of its southern neighbors in the U.S. This involves a commitment to progressive policies that prioritize environmental protection, social welfare programs, and labor rights, areas where Canadian policy often sets a high standard. The state has implemented initiatives in healthcare and climate change action that resonate strongly with Canadian models. For instance, Oregon's focus on renewable energy and carbon reduction aligns well with Canada's national and provincial climate goals. This shared ethos creates a natural affinity that transcends the international boundary. Economically, the ties are incredibly strong and vital. Trade exceeding $4 billion flows annually between Oregon and Canada. This isn't merely a friendly exchange. It represents a fundamental economic lifeline for Oregon. Key sectors like technology, agriculture, and manufacturing rely heavily on this cross-border commerce. The Portland metropolitan area, a major economic hub, benefits significantly from its proximity and relationship with Vancouver and the broader Canadian market. Disrupting this flow would have severe repercussions for Oregon's economy, impacting jobs, businesses, and overall prosperity. The cultural exchange also deepens the connection. The Pacific Northwest culture, often referred to as Cascadia, blurs the lines between Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, fostering a shared identity rooted in environmentalism, outdoor recreation, and a certain independent spirit. This shared regional identity makes the political border seem somewhat artificial in the face of common values and lifestyles. Given these deep connections, it's not entirely surprising that some voices within Oregon have discussed the possibility of leaving the U.S. While the Greater Idaho movement seeks to absorb conservative eastern Oregon counties, a different sentiment exists, one that looks northward towards Canada as a more compatible partner. If the direction of U.S. federal policy continues to diverge sharply from Oregon's core values, especially concerning environmental regulations and social issues, the appeal of aligning with Canada could grow stronger. The state's progressive population might find Canadian governance models more attractive than the political trajectory of the United States. Don't be shocked if this West Coast territory begins to seriously contemplate a northern future under such circumstances. The groundwork, in terms of economic integration and cultural similarity, is already firmly in place. Please remember to watch until the end of this video, as we'll be summarizing our findings and offering overall conclusions about this intriguing possibility. Now, let's shift our focus dramatically northward to number 5. Alaska. Picture this scenario. You reside in Alaska, the legendary last frontier, geographically detached from the contiguous United States. You are surrounded by vast wilderness, rugged mountains, and a unique way of life shaped by isolation and resilience. Then, it dawns on you. Wait a moment. My connections, my proximity, my economic realities seem closer to Canada than to much of the rest of the U.S. Alaska's geographical separation from the mainland 48 states is a fundamental aspect of its identity. This physical distance fosters a distinct perspective and necessitates strong ties with its immediate neighbor, Canada. And these ties run far deeper than merely sharing a long northern border. They are woven into the very fabric of Alaska's economy, security, and even its historical narrative. The Alaskan economy is profoundly intertwined with Canada's. Consider the major industries: oil and natural gas extraction, seafood harvesting, mining, and tourism. In all these critical sectors, Canada plays an indispensable role. Pipelines cross Canadian territory. Natural resources are often developed through joint ventures or by Canadian companies, and the tourism industry heavily relies on Canadian routes and visitors. Alaska's vast natural resource wealth finds significant markets and investment partners in Canada. For instance, major fishing operations based in Alaska depend significantly on access to Canadian waters and processing facilities. Canadian corporations have made substantial investments in Alaska's energy and natural resource sectors, creating jobs and driving economic activity. Without this robust Canadian connection, Alaska's economy would face serious, potentially crippling challenges. The dependence is structural and deeply embedded. But the relationship extends beyond economics. The military and defense links between Alaska and Canada are exceptionally strong, largely due to shared Arctic interests and strategic positioning. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, is a prime example, integrating U.S. and Canadian forces for continental defense. This collaboration means that in the event of a major international crisis or significant political upheaval within the U.S., the operational and strategic alignment between Alaska and Canada might naturally take precedence long before substantial involvement from the distant lower 48. The existing defense infrastructure already points towards a close, functional relationship independent of Washington, D.C.'s immediate direction in a crisis scenario. Alaska's history also adds a fascinating layer to this potential narrative. Originally Russian territory, it was purchased by the United States in the year 1867. While it has been American soil since that transaction, its unique past and ongoing connections differentiate it. Its deep economic and cultural links to Canada, combined with its geographical separation, mean that its allegiance might not be as rigidly fixed as one might assume. Should the U.S. experience severe internal instability or a dramatic economic collapse, Alaska might find itself reassessing its position. It might not feel as intrinsically bound to Washington, D.C. as other states do. Given its economic reliance, shared strategic interests, and geographical reality, the state might seriously question its future within the Union. If a significant political or economic tipping point were ever reached, Alaska could realistically look north and wonder if shifting its primary allegiance to Canada is not only possible, but perhaps even practical or necessary for its survival and prosperity. Let's journey back east and explore our fourth state, Vermont. This New England state, known for its picturesque landscapes and independent spirit, presents another compelling case. Now, we delve into Vermont. This territory boasts a rich and unique history of independence that sets it apart. Many forget that before officially joining the United States in 1791, Vermont existed for 14 years as its own independent entity, the Vermont Republic. This historical precedent of self-governance lingers in the state's psyche and contributes to a distinct political culture. Fast forward to the present day, and you'll discover that Vermont's progressive policies and cultural values often make it feel more akin to its northern neighbor, Canada, than to many other parts of the U.S. The state's political landscape is characterized by a strong commitment to environmentalism, social justice, and community-based initiatives, mirroring many Canadian provinces, especially neighboring Quebec. What makes Vermont particularly intriguing in this context is the existence of actual movements advocating for secession from the United States. For years, a group known as the Second Vermont Republic actively promoted the idea of Vermont breaking away to become an independent nation once again, or potentially exploring an alliance or even union with Canada. While this movement may be on the fringe, its very existence highlights a deeper questioning of Vermont's place within the current U.S. structure. Why would Vermont consider such a path? First, let's examine Vermont's economy. The state maintains strong trade relationships with Canada, particularly with Quebec. Key industries like agriculture, especially dairy and maple syrup production, clean energy technology, and tourism have significant cross-border components. Vermont's industrial profile aligns closely with Canadian strengths. Both regions prioritize sustainable practices, renewable energy development, and value-added agricultural products. The economic logic for closer integration is palpable. Furthermore, Vermont's approach to social programs often reflects Canadian models. The state has shown a willingness to experiment with healthcare reforms and social welfare initiatives that echo the Canadian system, suggesting a shared philosophy regarding the role of government in providing for its citizens. When you add the cultural dimension, the picture becomes even clearer. Vermont shares a deep appreciation for maple syrup, the charm of small-town life, and the beauty of the natural environment with Canadian culture, particularly that of Quebec and the Maritimes. This shared lifestyle, coupled with the existing economic interdependence and political similarities, makes the U.S.-Canada border feel less like a divider and more like a permeable membrane. The state's residents are accustomed to social policies that mirror those found in Canadian provinces, fostering a sense of familiarity and shared values. Therefore, if the prevailing political climate in the United States were to continue moving in directions that clash fundamentally with Vermont's deeply held progressive values, the idea of looking northward might gain traction. Given Vermont's unique history of independence and its existing affinities with Canada, the notion of leaving the U.S. and forging a closer relationship, or even joining Canada, might not seem as radical or outlandish as it initially sounds. It represents a potential convergence of historical identity, economic practicality, and cultural compatibility. Moving westward again, we arrive at number 3, Michigan. This Great Lakes state offers a powerful example of deep-rooted North American integration. Michigan, the heartland of the American auto industry, might seem firmly planted in the U.S. narrative, but its connection to Canada is arguably one of the most profound and multifaceted of any state. The idea of Michigan leaning towards Canada isn't just whimsical speculation. It's rooted in decades of intense economic symbiosis and shared infrastructure. This state shares a bond with Canada, particularly Ontario, that transcends mere geography. It's a structural reality. Michigan and Canada are so deeply connected economically that a significant disruption in their relationship could potentially cause Michigan's entire economy to falter. We're discussing staggering figures. Approximately $80 billion in trade value crosses the border between Michigan and Canada each year. This makes Michigan the most economically integrated U.S. state with Canada. This isn't just about proximity. It's about vital supply chains and shared industries. The Detroit-Windsor corridor stands as one of the most crucial trade arteries in North America. Thousands of trucks traverse this route daily, carrying essential goods back and forth, fueling industries on both sides. The economic health of southeastern Michigan is inextricably linked to the smooth functioning of this cross-border flow. But the connection that truly defines this relationship is the automotive industry. Michigan's auto sector, the historical backbone of its economy, is heavily dependent on Canada. Complex supply chains crisscross the border, with parts manufactured in one country often assembled in the other. Many vehicles are built collaboratively, with components moving seamlessly between Michigan and Ontario facilities. You simply cannot discuss Michigan's economic well-being without acknowledging its critical relationship with the Canadian auto sector and the broader Canadian market. The interdependence extends to essential infrastructure as well. Michigan shares vital infrastructure links with Canada, including major bridges like the Ambassador Bridge, tunnels facilitating transit, and even integrated power grids. Significantly, the Ambassador Bridge, the single busiest border crossing for trade between the two nations, is currently owned by a Canadian entity. This physical integration underscores the practical day-to-day reliance Michigan has on its Canadian connections. Furthermore, Michigan also relies on Canadian electricity imports to help meet its energy demands, highlighting another layer of dependence. Given this intense integration, it starts to feel plausible that Michigan could, under certain circumstances, function almost more like a Canadian province than a typical U.S. state. Historically, this isn't entirely unprecedented. Michigan even briefly considered the possibility of joining Canada in the 1800s following the Toledo War border dispute with Ohio. While that path wasn't taken, the underlying sentiment of shared interests hasn't vanished completely. Therefore, if Michigan ever perceived that its core economic interests, particularly in the auto sector and cross-border trade, were better served by aligning more closely with Canada than with the diverging policies or economic fortunes of the rest of the U.S., the historical and infrastructural links could make a northward shift seem less improbable than one might imagine. The economic entanglement is simply too vast to ignore. Next on our list, number 2, is Minnesota. This state, often known for its lakes and friendly populace, might surprise you with the depth of its Canadian connection. Minnesota is one of those states that might not immediately spring to mind when thinking about Canadian influence, but upon closer inspection, the connections are profound and undeniable. Let's start with the basics. Geography. Minnesota shares a significant border with Canada, stretching nearly 550 miles alongside Manitoba and Ontario. This extensive border fosters considerable cross-border interaction and movement. But the relationship goes far beyond simply being adjacent territories. The economic ties are substantial. In the year 2023 alone, Minnesota exported goods worth over $7 billion to Canada. This makes Canada one of Minnesota's most crucial economic partners, representing a massive component of the state's overall trade profile. This economic interdependence means that the health of the Canadian economy directly impacts Minnesota's prosperity, particularly in sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and mining. It's not just about business transactions, though. Minnesota and Canada share a remarkable number of cultural traits. Think of the reputation for exceptionally friendly people, often referred to as Minnesota Nice, which echoes Canadian politeness. There's a shared deep appreciation for the outdoors, with similar landscapes fostering similar recreational activities like fishing, hiking, and winter sports. And yes, both regions endure famously brutal winters, forging a common resilience. The cultural overlap extends even to accents. Some Minnesotans have famously been mistaken for Canadians due to their distinct speech patterns. This cultural resonance makes the border feel less significant in daily life. Heck, many Minnesotans have family ties across the border or even hold dual citizenship, further blurring the lines. That deep-seated connection runs through generations. Historically, Minnesota's links to Canada predate its U.S. statehood. Before becoming a state in 1858, parts of the region were governed by the British, and the vital fur trade created strong ties with Canadian networks. That historical connection, rooted in shared economic activity and governance, still subtly influences the region today. Politically, Minnesota's inclinations also often align more closely with Canadian approaches than with the broader U.S. spectrum, particularly on certain issues. Progressive policies concerning healthcare access, environmental protection standards, and the provision of social services are generally more in sync with Canada's way of operating than with the policies favored by some more conservative states within the U.S. Historically, Minnesota has demonstrated a greater openness to robust social programs and policies that echo Canadian values. The state has often been more comfortable with the concept of a decentralized governmental approach and stronger social support systems, hallmarks often associated with the Canadian model. Consequently, considering all these factors, the significant economic reliance, the striking cultural similarities, the shared historical roots, and the political affinities, it's not entirely far-fetched to envision a scenario where Minnesota might reconsider its alignment. If the U.S. were to face a major political or economic crisis, or if federal policies continue to diverge significantly from Minnesotan values, some experts speculate that Minnesota might look north for its future. With so many pre-existing connections already in place, the foundation for a potential shift towards Canada is arguably stronger here than in many other states. Finally, we arrive at number 1, Washington. Now let's talk about the state of Washington. You might primarily associate it with tech giants headquartered in Seattle or its vibrant coffee culture. While those are defining features, there's a much larger dynamic at play beneath the surface. A potential shift towards Canada that feels surprisingly close and increasingly plausible. Washington's relationship with Canada, particularly British Columbia, runs exceptionally deep, extending far beyond just sharing a border. The state is intricately tied to Canada economically, politically, and culturally, perhaps more so than any other state on this list. In the year 2023, Washington conducted trade worth more than $20 billion in goods with Canada. This staggering figure underscores Washington's position as one of the most economically dependent states on its northern neighbor. Key industries, from aerospace and technology to agriculture and timber, rely heavily on this cross-border exchange. The economies of Seattle and Vancouver are increasingly integrated, forming a dynamic cross-border metropolitan region often referred to as the Cascadia Corridor. But the interdependence isn't limited to trade and goods. Washington also relies significantly on Canada for its energy needs. Massive amounts of hydroelectric power flow south from British Columbia, helping to power Washington's homes and industries. This energy linkage creates another critical layer of integration and mutual reliance. Beyond the economic and infrastructural ties, Washington's policies and political landscape often align more closely with Canada's than with many other parts of the United States. On crucial issues such as healthcare policy, environmental protection initiatives, and the structure of social services, Washington's progressive stance frequently mirrors Canadian approaches. The state government has actively pursued policies on climate change and social welfare that resonate strongly with those north of the border. This political alignment reflects a shared set of values and priorities between Washington and its Canadian neighbors. Culturally, the overlap is undeniable and palpable. The Pacific Northwest lifestyle shared between Washington and British Columbia fosters a distinct regional identity. From Vancouver down to Seattle and Portland, residents share similar lifestyles centered around outdoor adventures, a tech-driven economy, environmental consciousness, and yes, a profound love for good coffee. People move back and forth across the border constantly for work, leisure, and family. Many British Columbians commute to work in Washington while maintaining their homes in Canada, illustrating the fluidity of the border in this region. What makes Washington's case particularly compelling is the proactive effort towards deeper integration. Politicians in Washington have not just acknowledged the connection, but have actively floated ideas for strengthening it. Proposals for high-speed rail connecting Seattle to Vancouver in under 2 hours have been seriously discussed. While ambitious, such projects demonstrate a clear intention to integrate further with Canada, not pull away. Historically, the region has always had strong ties, even before formal borders were rigidly established. Considering the depth of these existing economic, political, cultural, and infrastructural connections, you have to seriously ask, could Washington ever be better off formally aligning with Canada? If the United States were to experience significant political fragmentation or a severe economic downturn that disproportionately affected other regions, the stability and compatibility offered by Canada might seem incredibly appealing to Washingtonians. The state's deep integration already makes it function, in many respects, like a Canadian province. The cultural similarities, shared economic interests, and aligned political values create a compelling argument. It wouldn't be that shocking, under the right circumstances, to imagine Washington seriously considering a future oriented northward rather than eastward across the continental U.S. And there you have it. 6 U.S. states with connections to Canada so profound that the idea of them breaking away and joining their northern neighbor isn't just pure fantasy. Could Oregon, Alaska, Vermont, Michigan, Minnesota, or Washington realistically consider leaving the U.S. for Canada? As we've explored, the economic reliance, cultural affinities, political alignments, and shared infrastructure create scenarios where, under specific pressures like major political upheaval or economic collapse in the U.S., such a move might seem less outlandish than conventional wisdom suggests. Each state presents a unique case, from Vermont's history of independence and active secessionist discussions to Michigan's and Washington's sheer economic and infrastructural entanglement. Alaska's geographical isolation and strategic importance, coupled with its resource-based economy, make its ties to Canada critical. Oregon and Minnesota exhibit strong cultural and political parallels that resonate deeply with Canadian sensibilities. While the path to actually joining Canada would be fraught with immense legal, political, and social complexities, the underlying conditions and connections are undeniably present. The tipping point hasn't been reached, and perhaps it never will be. However, the deep integration and shared characteristics suggest that the U.S.-Canada border might be more fluid in concept, if not in law, than we often assume. Only time will reveal the future trajectory of these relationships. The connections, however, are already firmly established and continue to deepen. If you found this exploration of potential North American realignments intriguing, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that challenges conventional perspectives on geopolitics and economics. Don't forget to comment below with your thoughts and where you're tuning in from. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.